The business, motherfucker.
The Daily Read. Your source for news, politics, sports, and all things trending. Here's your host, Marcus Gentry.
Was detained Pussy Riot. They're this group of activists who are artists, and in my tweet I said free Pussy Riot and hashtag stay woke. After that, woke took off.
Your art
Yeah.
took this concept, ideas and words can evolve, but it really put this out, this idea we should wake up to these problems and stay woke.
Sure.
We track how you started it and how it spread, and then how some on the right are sort of hijacking or attacking it or giving it a different definition.
Sure.
So I want to play this for you since you bring it up, and then we could talk about it.
All right.
Even though you go through struggle and strive to keep a healthy life, stay woke. Everybody knows a black or white. There's creatures in every shape and size. Stay woke.
Stay woke. It's just urging folks to pay attention, to be alert.
Wow.
I want my culture to stay woke, but I want the other cultures that's supporting us to stay woke.
Woke fascism that will destroy our nation.
We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke goes to die.
I think they mean black. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just another way to say thug or something else, right?
Yeah. And how do you feel about that?
It is what it is. It doesn't belong to us anymore. And, you know, once something goes out in the world, it takes a life of its own. It's an energy of its own. I can tell you what woke means.
Please.
It just means being aware, being in alignment with nature. Because if you're in alignment with that, you're aware of everything that's going on.
Welcome to the Daily Read, and I am your host, Marcus Gentry. I give kudos to Erykah Badu for inventing that word. Well, she didn't invent the word, but making the phrase popular amongst people. The phrase stay woke. And I thought a lot about what I was going to do my show about this week. Sometimes when I'm driving, I partition my brain into 3 or 4 different segments. And one part of my brain may be listening to music or comedy. Another part of my brain is working. And another part of my brain be thinking about what I want to produce to the masses of people out here. The word stay woke has been hijacked by the GOP, by the right-wingers, by the racists. It's been hijacked to include everything in it. Feminism, LGBTQ rights, immigration. That's not what that was meant for. Each of those segments have their own problems. And what Erykah Badu was saying is staying woke means being aware when people trying to do something to you. Regardless of what people say out their mouth, watching how they move. Whoever it is, whether it's white supremacists, whether it's our own kind. Staying woke means you're not asleep to what's going on around you. And it goes over a lot of people's head because the Republican Party has made it their business to dominate in the, I don't want to say fake news because Donald Trump basically coined that phrase, but some people out here are good at programming others, and when you good at that, they put you in the forefront of whatever movement, like King, Donald Trump, Malcolm X. Whenever you good at bringing something to the masses, they put you in the forefront to do that. And staying woke is not a bad word. But like she said, that word, once it got put out there in the atmosphere, it's not ours anymore. Because like I said, white supremacists and the Republican Party have hijacked that word, and now they just throw everything in there to the point where they're even trying to take books off the shelves, books about real history, because they don't want people to be woke. They don't want people to know that this is a dominated society of white male heterosexuals. Now, another part of my show is not just talking about staying woke, the whole woke thing. The problem is, I talked about this on a few shows back. The problem is, you have a female dominated society here in America, in our homes, in our politics, in our society. But yes, women do get paid less than men. Yes, that is true. Yes, women get blocked out of things more than men do. Yes, that is true. But we still live in a female driven society, and the men still hold the reins of power. But think about that. Who really holds the power? You have men running the government, running the police departments, running organizations, right? But out of those 5 or 6 men who run certain things, you got 30 women under them who complaining about being harassed, who complaining about being underpaid, who complaining about being this, who complaining about being that. They are steering the ship. Understand what I'm trying to tell you. Yes, this is still a male dominated society when it comes to leadership roles, but the women are secretly running the ship. Sounds strange. I'm gonna give you some examples, and then at the end of the show I'm gonna give you a rant that this guy went on about certain movies. And the reason I'm gonna do the movies is because this is a prime example. Just one industry, the movie industry, is a prime example of what I'm talking about when I say men still run the country, but women are steering the ship. That's like a man owning the Titanic, but the second captain or the lieutenant under the captain is a female. The people down in the boiler room are females. The waitresses in the chef's lounge are females. Yeah, the man owns the ship. He's steering the ship, but he can get shut down anytime. And this is what I mean when I say this is a female driven society. And no matter how many times you hear the women say that they're underpaid, they're undervalued, they're under this, under that, under pressure, they still hold the power in this country. They're the ones that are not woke. They don't get it. They're starting to get it. They're starting to get it. And the ones that do get it faster than the others, they take advantage of it. They will get out here and do some dirty stuff and then fall back into a female I'm a victim role. Those are the ones that are dangerous, but they're starting to get it. I'm gonna go further into this because, like I said, being woke is not a problem. That's never been a problem. I hope more people, men and women, black or white, become woke about the things that's going on around them. The problem is you have certain people in society trying to combine being woke with other issues that have problems of their own in our society that has nothing to do with being woke. And the examples I'm going to give is through two sets of movies. The MCU, which is Marvel Studios, the comic book heroes, and Star Wars. Okay? This is just the movie industry. I'm not talking about any other industry. I'm not talking about the automotive industry. I'm not talking about politics. I'm just giving you guys an example of what I mean and what this show is talking about when I say, yes, men are in positions of power, but they're not really running the ship. The ship is being steered off a ledge. The car is being driven off the cliff. When it comes to who's steering things, let's get to it.
A wise man on Twitter once said, "It's the aroundest of times and the find outest of times," and that is certainly the case for woke Hollywood. And there are signs that the entire ecosystem of the entertainment industry is in absolute collapse. I mean, aside from the economic downturn, losing billions on streaming, the looming Writers Guild strike, no, the two things that are going to bother woke Hollywood the most are the death of the movie star and the decline of their top award show, the Oscars.
I'm gonna stop that right there. You see, this guy, he's not the one I like that goes on the rant. But this guy, he's basically trying to let people know that Hollywood is woke. But what he's not realizing is he's not woke. He's trying to relate what Hollywood is doing with the feminist movement with being woke. Those are two separate things. But like I said, certain people have a way of convincing you that something that is good is bad. I'm gonna say that again, like the word nigga or my nigga. Some kind of way we've taken a term that was used against us to be a downgrade or a disrespect, and convinced ourselves that, and I use it, especially when I get mad. I'm trying to break away from it. I'm trying to break away from a lot of things as far as my speech go, but that word is a prime example of what I mean when I say some people have a way of utilizing words and things like that to convince you that something is bad. It's really good. Like the fact that I was attacked for 8 months. You got people literally out here trying to tell me they're trying to help. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. That's what I mean when I say you have people out here that have a gift of gab. And we're finna get further on into this.
Please watch our movie.
Damn! You remember the Oscars, at least the Oscars of old. We used to actually look forward to them. Occasionally, they'd be entertaining. We'd root for films. Hell, we'd have Oscar pools at work. It was the gay Super Bowl, and it used to have ratings that rivaled the Super Bowl, but not so much anymore. Back in the day, it used to be a celebration of the art of film and Hollywood, and no, they didn't get everything right. Who could forget Annie Hall winning over Star Wars, or Chariots of Fire winning over Raiders of the Lost Ark, Dark Knight getting snubbed, just to name a few. And who could forget what I think is the worst decision of them all, E.T. winning over Douglas Trumbull's Blade Runner for special effects, a travesty. But occasionally they get things right, like Lord of the Rings Return of the King winning Best Picture, although all 3 Lord of the Rings films should have won Best Picture. Amen! And yes, occasionally we get something like Marlon Brando giving up his Oscar for The Godfather so a fake Native American can give a speech.
Very regretfully cannot accept this very generous award. And the reasons for this being are the treatment of American Indians today by the film industry.
And who?
But what I'm trying to say is, even back then when The Godfather came out, Hollywood had a problem. And the problem has gotten worse ever since it came out that people like Bill Cosby and the other guy, Epstein, was going around forcing female and sometimes male characters to have sex just to be in movies and putting roofies and drugs into their drinks. These people been knowing about this. Just like the people in the music industry, which is a separate industry from Hollywood, been knowing about R. Kelly. It's been well documented he was messing around with young girls, pimping them out. Just like Epstein, just like Bill Cosby. I've seen people come out with stories about Bill Cosby going all the way back to the 80s. Understand what this is. But what's happening is these issues came out because people started to become woke. And now you have a certain population in the communities that is fighting back against being woke. There's no problem with being woke. You're supposed to be aware of your surroundings. You're supposed to be aware of who making moves against you. You don't supposed to turn a blind eye to it. You don't supposed to. You know, when people trying to hurt you or take your life, you don't supposed to turn a blind eye to that. You confront that. I don't care how long it takes until you know it's dealt with. Period. And no matter what kind of obfuscation that people throw in the air trying to get you to go about your business, you don't never let that go on. Being woke is a real thing and you're supposed to be. But never confuse that with feminism, gay rights, abortion issues, inequality. All of those issues are issues within themselves. But the GOP and the Republican Party and certain elements in our community is trying to wrap all of that up into one ball to destroy you from being aware. We're going to go further into this when we come back off this first commercial break. We'll be back.
The business, motherfucker.
The Daily Read.
The business, motherfucker.
The Daily Read.
I thought that maybe you should be acting, and so I did a couple of soaps, and you're too thin, too fat, too this, too this. You're Latin, no, you're not Latin. You're white, no, you're not white. Are you brown? Well, you're not brown enough. Well, you have an accent. Well, you don't have an accent. Well, and I said, who makes the decisions? The producers. That's what I'm going to go do.
I used to say, if I'm going to be someone, who do I want to be? I want to be Kathy Kennedy. We can do better. I know we can. I know we can.
Funny that people call it the X-Men. There's a lot of female superheroes in that X-Men group, so I think it's outdated.
And then completely tear them apart. So that was the fun part, to tear something apart.
America Chavez!
is cheeky and as cheeky Chavez as you can have it. You can watch it in 2D, in 3D,
So many options.
in 3D IMAX,
4D.
4D, whatever D you want.
I'm sure somewhere else.
I am not a comic book fan. If I have a choice between a political thriller or a love story and a comic book movie, I probably won't pay that money. I probably will get fired after this. You are streaming live, right? Yeah.
Well,
Hollywood doesn't have a woke problem. Hollywood has a feminist problem and a entitlement problem. Those are the two things Hollywood has. I'll throw a third one in there. Not only does Hollywood have an entitlement problem and a feminist problem, Hollywood has what you call trying to put it in the right words here. Trying to put it into right words, people. They hire people because they like them. They hire people because they like them. This woman, actually it's two women, two separate women. One is in charge of Star Wars and one is in charge of Disney with the Marvel characters. Okay? These women have been circling around certain CEOs of Marvel and Disney and Lucasfilm for years. So they're well liked, they're friends with these people. The problem is they're not comic book lovers. You can't hire somebody to do comic book movies, Star Wars movies, if they don't love this stuff. You understand what I'm saying? Like say if this podcast takes off in the next 20 years or the next 10 years or the next 5 years, however long it takes, and I become a podcast sensation, I got enough people, I got enough things going on to hire 20 people. I'm not going to hire somebody who loves to talk about animals. I don't talk about animals on this show. I talk about politics, and every now and then I throw the odd movie stuff in there or social events. I'm going to hire somebody who's with that. That's the problem Hollywood has. When it comes to Star Wars, they hired somebody who never read the books, never cared about the Star Wars franchise. You know, he just wanted to be a good filmmaker. The problem with that is the people who put their good time and effort into some of the best Marvel movies that has come out, those people grew up reading Iron Man, reading Spider-Man. They love this stuff. And then the bad ones, when they go and ask the director, why did he feel the movie turned out so bad? I don't know. One guy said he was sitting on the couch doing an interview. I wish I could have found that interview, but he was sitting on the couch doing an interview, and I think it was the Solo movie. The director said, well, I really never I like non-fictional books. I like biographies. I'm really not into the whole comic book thing. Then why the fuck did you make this movie? It's horrible. You know, it's a horrible movie. You're not even into it. And this is what's going on in Hollywood.
Nerderotic.com.
As you may or may not know, Marvel president Victoria Alonso is no more at Disney.
Amazing.
And let's be real, Marvel has had a really bad week and Disney has had a worse 6 months. Since last November, Disney has lost millions of subscribers on D+, has lost billions on the fledgling streaming service, fired a CEO in the middle of the night on a Sunday, and fired a Marvel president. And now their big star, who the next two Marvel phases completely rely on, Jonathan Majors, has been arrested and arraigned in New York, still innocent until proven guilty.
Booyah. Like I said, being woke is what made them fire these people. The woman was a feminist. She done kicked off a whole she-verse in the Marvel universe. The man, I think he got caught up in some kind of scandal about budgets. So basically what you got going on is you have a man who ain't worried about the movies because he's trying to scrape money, and then you got a woman that they've hired to run the show who's a feminist. She basically has turned all of the male characters into female. That's what she basically did. Alright, we're back. I had to raise my window up and allow them to do their thing out there. As far as I was saying, back to what I was saying, you have a feminist movement going on in a lot of industries, and it's been going on since the 90s. People haven't seen it because over time women have slowly started to outpopulate men, and there's a good show that I did on it a few weeks ago about the wars that we fought, the World War I, World War II, Vietnam, the Gulf Wars, where most of our men went off and fought and died, while the women stayed at home to work in the factories and take care of the kids, because women couldn't fight. Still to this day, they won't put too many women on the front lines. And if you do see a woman on the front lines, she's in a support role. She's not out there basically shooting up bang bang. It's a few out there that's with it. It's a few gung-ho women out there. I've met them. I've been on plenty of military bases, and I've seen women out here who just as tough as the men when it comes down to war. But the vast majority of the women that go to war, they're in support roles. So when these men run off and die, it leaves a vacuum for years, and we've never recovered from that. So the whole feminist movement has been going on for a long time, but the Me Too movement really put it in the forefront of people's minds, and they were right to seek justice for somebody raping them. They were right to seek justice for somebody paying a male $10 million but paying them $250 million for the same job. They were right to do that. But what I'm saying is, when it comes down to certain industries, you don't have to force it. And what I mean by forcing it is, like I'm saying, I'm taking the example of Hollywood with the whole she universe, the female Thor. You have female Spider-Man coming out. You have all of these male characters. You have Ironheart, who's replacing Iron Man. You have the Black Panther, who he literally passed away in real life. And in the comic books, his sister took over the role for just a little while, and then his son took over the Black Panther. But from what I'm hearing, you know, I scan sometimes about this stuff. From what I'm hearing, they're going to keep her in the role of Black Panther. And this is another thing that these people are doing, besides just the whole gender swap. Another thing they're doing, they're going off script. What made Star Wars so great is not just the original movies. Star Wars has almost 70 books, okay? A lot of people don't know that. I'm going to say it one more time. Star Wars has almost 70 books. I've read most of them. I literally found a library. I was down in Beaumont, Texas. I found a library that had almost every Star Wars book in it. I was shocked. Warhammer. They had almost every Warhammer. For those of you who know what Warhammer is, they had almost every Warhammer books on the bookshelves. Brand new. Wasn't nobody reading them. But what I'm getting at with that is they have so much good material, but they don't want to pay the authors. You see, George Lucas, I'm going to get into a little history about Star Wars. George Lucas, who invented Star Wars with Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. Okay, for those of you who don't watch it because you're not into science fiction, okay, I get it. You got some people out here who don't know nothing about Star Wars. But everybody knows about Darth Vader. Everybody done heard about Darth Vader, okay? So, he invented that. But he had other projects that he wanted to do in life. So what he did was he hired a team of writers before he sold it to Disney years ago, before he sold the company to Disney. He hired like 20 book writers to write Star Wars novels. And these are some good books where Chewbacca died, saving one of Han Solo's sons. But in the TV show, in the movie, Chewbacca didn't die. Han Solo got killed by his own son. This is what I mean when I say they're going off script and they're tearing the whole thing apart. You already have something set in stone that's good, but you don't want to pay the writers, so you hire these directors to come in and they changing everything. They're putting women in places that women shouldn't even be in because the novels don't have those women in those roles, and they're messing up everything that people love. Like if I go to a movie and I know I done read the book, even if you don't stick all the way to the book guidelines, at least come close, because I enjoyed the book so much. If I go and see, let me tell y'all what I mean by that. I read there was a planet about to explode, and Han Solo only had time enough to save one of his sons. Chewbacca had the other son on a different part of the planet. So Han Solo shot down there, grabbed one of his sons, and flew over to the other side of the planet in the Millennium Falcon, backed the ship up. Chewbacca threw Han Solo's other son onto the ship. An explosion happened. Chewbacca didn't have time to jump on the ship himself. So Han Solo and Princess Leia had to take the ship off the planet before all of them died. And as the ship was flying off the planet, Chewbacca was waving at them as an explosion happened, killing him and everybody on the planet. That's an epic death. That's epic. But they spoiled it. That's an epic death of a character that's a mainstream character in Star Wars history. Chewbacca, the big woolly guy, died saving one of Han Solo's sons, and they ruined it. This is what I mean when I say Hollywood doesn't have a woke problem. It has a feminist problem, They don't want to pay the writers, which is the reason why the writers are on a writer strike right now. They don't want to pay the writers because whoever wrote that, he put time and effort into writing that, because he told George Lucas that he was going to kill Chewbacca off, and George Lucas gave him permission to do this. In the book, he gave him permission. He said, because he told all of his writers, do whatever story you want to do about Star Wars, but if you kill off one of the main characters, run it by me first. And when he read that, George Lucas looked at that as an epic death of one of his main characters that he wrote about. And they ruined it. This is why people are complaining about Hollywood and the stuff that's going on in Hollywood. Let's continue on.
Briefly recap, it was initially announced that Victoria Alonso left Disney Marvel. Then we found out Victoria Alonso was fired from Disney Marvel. Then we found out why Victoria Alonso was fired from Disney Marvel. According to Disney's official version of events, she breached her contract by promoting and producing another film for another company. Now Victoria Alonso is weighing legal action against Disney Marvel, I love that they called it Disney Marvel, over sudden firing, serious consequences, promises lawyer Patty Glazer, as Mouse House points indisputable breach of contract. Now, if you believe for 1 second this is the only reason this woman was fired, I have some land in Wakanda to sell you.
This guy is funny. But this woman is an activist, a feminist activist. And like I said, she rotates around the circles of those people who runs and owns Disney and stuff like that. They picked the wrong choice. Now they become woke. You see how I just did that? Woke and feminism are two different things. Hollywood has a feminist problem, not a woke problem. But Disney became woke to the fact that this woman is horrible at her job, because they're starting to pump out She-Hulk, Ironheart, female Black Panther. All of these roles are not meant to be. People are going to see these movies because they read about this stuff in books and comic books. So when they go to the movies, they want to see, visualize the stuff that they read in the books and the comic books. But what they're getting is a strong chin female saving the day. And they're like, man, I didn't read that. There's nothing wrong with it. But make your own movie. I came here to see Iron Man kick ass because I read that as a kid. I didn't come here to see She-Iron Man. I didn't come here to see that. And that's the problem that Hollywood is having. Plus, they don't want to pay the writers.
Everyone at the House of Mouse that she is not going quietly. And you want to know why? Because you hired an activist and then promoted her to president.
Fight. As long as I am on Marvel Studios, I will fight for representation.
The Oscar-nominated producer has retained the services of one Patty Glazer. To that end, with competing points of view on what's going on behind the scenes, the law firm partnership is putting Disney on notice. By the way, Patty Glazer is the very same lawyer representing Karen McCarthy, the producer suing Lucasfilm over The Acolyte. Now, I have never said that Victoria Alonso is solely responsible for the identity politics-driven MCU, but she is a force behind it. No, that responsibility still lays at the feet of Kevin Feige. A Disney spokesperson told Deadline this evening, "We will continue to wish her the best for the future and thank her for her numerous contributions to the studio. Now don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out." This is my favorite part. Alonso still has her Possibility as her superpower memoir coming out later this year on a Disney imprint. I'm looking forward to that epilogue. Now, dear viewer, I'd like you to consider the possibility that Victoria Alonso was fired for more than one thing. Yes, she breached her contract. She was the coordinator of all the video effects departments and oversaw 17 projects that were all varying degrees of crap. The very press-friendly Alonso, who was constantly an outspoken champion of a diversity at Disney to the point where she called out the then Disney CEO Bob Chapek to take a stand against Florida's parental rights bill. I don't care if Bob Iger and Victoria Alonso were best friends. They went to each other's house for Christmas and barbecues. Their kids were on the same soccer team. They both had the same favorite baseball team. If you call out a previous CEO, even if it's one Bob Iger hated, she still had to go. Eventually, she was going to be a problem, and eventually came. In what is certain to become ever sharper elbows if this goes to court, Deadline has been told that despite her affable demeanor to the press, Alonso was sometimes challenging to work with at the House of Mouse. Breach of contract, being called a bully by sources from video effects departments, overseeing the complete disaster that is the MCU, being a giant and annoying woke activist, calling out.
Again, you see how he did that? Now, I agree with him, everything he said up until he tried to blend woke with what's going on. Remember what I said, people. Being woke is something separate from being a feminist, a gay activist, a abortion right activist. All of that's different. Being woke simply means you aware. You aware of what's going on, you know what's going on, and you're not going to stand for it in most cases. But he has the gift of gab. And Hollywood doesn't have a woke problem. There's nothing wrong with being woke in life. The problem is, in the wake of Epstein and Bill Cosby and so many other producers and actors who have been going around raping people for decades, somebody became woke of that. Or did they? Because like I said, there's people who already knew this was going on. You know, you can't force that many top female actors to suck your penis or have sex with you without people knowing about it. It's just not going to happen. I mean, these are household names that came out and said, yeah, he forced me to have sex with him too. These are women who we have been seeing on the big screen for decades. So people already knew, you know, to get a part in this movie, you're going to have to give them some sex. They already knew. It goes on in the music industry. It goes on in a lot of different industries. You know, to get ahead, women had to give head or give sex. And it's been going on. And the masses have become woke to it. The few people in Hollywood that knew about it are not the masses. They were in positions to stop it, but they are not the masses. And this is the reason why so many people are trying to stop others from being woke. Because a woke person dropped into a bucket of sheep can ruin everything for the wolves that hang around in that bucket of sheep. Because that woke person is going to let them wolves know, I see you. You can blend in with these people all you want to, but I see you. And I will destroy you. That's the reason why they don't like the whole woke person. And this is why the GOP, the Republican Party, is trying their best to put a dampener on this. Let's continue on.
The business, motherfucker.
The Daily Read. The Daily Read.
But I think having all three films where the major character that was introduced was a woman, it seems like it's a shift in the entire MCU. I hate the MCU slogan. I hate it. I hate it with every fiber of my being.
You heard Grace say it herself, and now the mainstream access media is admitting that the MCU exists. And one thing is abundantly clear. The MCU killed the MCU star. But before we get started with what the kids call these days the cope from the access media, I think we need to do an updated count of the new characters introduced in the MCU Stage 4, and we'll do it by gender. All two of them, and we'll start with the men. Sorry, ladies. In order of appearance, from Black Widow, we had General Dreykov, who is now deceased. Red Guardian.
I am simple man.
You are an idiot.
From Falcon and Winter Soldier, John Walker.
I think we got off on the wrong foot.
Looking strong, John. From Loki, Mobius, and Kang, who is now deceased, kind of. From Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Bracelets, Shang-Chi and his bad dad, Zhu Wenwu, deceased. From the Eternals, Druig, Phastos, Kino, and Icarus, deceased. From Moon Knight and Arthur Harrow, deceased. From Thor Love and Thunder, Gore, deceased. And from Wakanda Forever, Namor. Honorable mentions, Mr. Fantastic, deceased. Professor X, deceased from Doctor Strange Mom. Now for the ladies, this may take a minute. From WandaVision, Monica Rambeau and Agatha Harkness. From Black Widow, the new Black Widow, the Taskmaster, and Melena, the female Mengele. Falcon and Winter Soldier, Madame Hydra.
Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. Actually, it's Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine.
Or Val and Freckle Jesus. Loki, female Loki, and Ravonna Renslayer, or Girl Boss. Shang-Chi, Zhu Zheling, Ying Nan, and Marvel's Katie.
Oh my God.
The Eternals, Ajak, Cersei, Makari, Sprite, Athena, Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, and Echo. Moon Knight, the Scarlet Scarab. She's an Egyptian superhero, you know.
Slay!
Miss Marvel, Doctor Strange Mom, America Chavez.
You don't know anything.
Thor Love and Thunder, female Thor. She-Hulk Attorney at Law, She-Hulk and Titania. Wakanda Forever, Aneka and Ironheart. For those of you counting at home, that is 15 male hero/villains introduced, 5 deceased, and 27 female hero/villains introduced, 0 deceased. And
now, I like doing controversial shows because many people are going to try to claim that I'm against women being powerful and this and that. Man, that's not what this is. It's plain and simple. I love science fiction novels. I write science fiction. And I love to read it, comic books and all. Comic book novels and all of that. Okay? What made female characters so powerful is because they were not all together at one time. Let me give you an example of what I mean. When they brought out female Thor in the comic books, there was no female Black Panther. It was just the Black Panther. When they brought out Ironheart, which is the black girl who took over Tony Stark's Iron Man, there was no female Black Panther and there was no female Thor. That's what made these characters so powerful in literature. Because at the time when they was trying to figure out who was this Ironheart, and then they finally captured her and took off her helmet, it was a black female. That shocked the whole comic book world. That's what made it special. When Thor lost his powers and somebody had to take up his position to save the earth, his girlfriend became the female Thor. And it shocked the comic book world. That's what made her so powerful. Never at one time did they have Black Panther, Ironheart, female Thor, She-Hulk, and all of these female characters taking over at one time. Basically, they're ruining their story. I'm hoping y'all following along with me. They're ruining the whole female coming out by herself with a team full of men and standing her ground just like the rest. They ruined that. Because now you have people going off script, writing stories about all female characters, because right now the Avengers is fucked. There has never been an all female Avengers except for right now. Never. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with Hollywood putting women in positions of power. Don't get it confused. The problem is the stories that are great, they're trying to change it to force some type of women liberation feminist movement. That's a problem. Because now you're ruining great storylines. It was a great storyline when Ironheart started running around with her Iron Man suit. They didn't know who she was. They didn't know if she was a villain or a hero, but the Avengers had to catch her. And when they caught her and took her helmet off, it's a young black female who's a genius who built her own Tony Stark suit. That's what made her story so powerful as a female superhero. And they ruining it.
Now, we were told that there was no such thing as the MCU. There is no MCU, but maybe there should be. When the first episode of She-Hulk Attorney at Law hit Disney Plus on August 18th, an almost instant wave of backlash hit the internet, probably because it sucked. Some people did not like the series explicitly discussing the very real challenges that women face in their careers and their lives as a consequence of the patriarchy. Or maybe, just maybe, I want you to consider this, maybe the audience didn't like the titular character. She-Hulk was also review bombed online similarly to Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Eternals, and Miss Marvel. By the way, Black Panther wasn't review bombed for having main characters that were not white, heterosexual male, and or for discussing issues of racism and sexism, because that's what we watch superhero movies for.
Again, they ruining great storylines that were already written by great writers, because number one, they don't want to pay the writers. Remember, George Lucas, who invented Star Wars, hired about 20 authors to write stories about Han Solo, their kids, Leia, their kids, Luke Skywalker, and their kids. When Disney bought Lucasfilms, George Lucas already had 20 writers who wrote good novels. Disney said, we're not going to pay them people, so we're not going to use their stories. We're just going to use our writers and rewrite everything. And they fucked it up. Star Wars was a horrible... I liked it because I like science fiction movies. But the stuff that I read in the books was mwah, like my guy in New York, mwah, fan-fucking-tastic. They should have made movies out of those stories, because Luke Skywalker died in the new Star Wars films, but in the books he goes on to have kids of his own and became a very powerful Jedi Grandmaster. His story goes on in the books, and There's some great stories. But they killed him off and put a female in his place. This is nuts. And she's not even a damn Skywalker. She's a Palpatine. If anybody knows about the whole Star Wars universe. Let's continue on.
Called Rise of the MCU, in which women are apparently replacing men in the MCU to the tune of almost 2-1. They may certainly be valid criticisms of She-Hulk. However, labeling the series anti-man or woke is really just thinly veiled misogyny and fragile masculinity. Yet you're bitching about the term MCU. Furthermore, when we look at the history of women in the MCU, both in front and behind the camera, calling the MCU is simply inaccurate. Is it now? Let's recap briefly. First, there wasn't an MCU, followed by 5 big problems with the MCU theory. Then it turned into how real is the MCU controversy. Coming right off the heels of that, Marvel Studios just mocked its own sexist MCU controversy, followed by the problem with the MCU, and the latest MCU full-on mode. Every Avenger seems to have a female version now. Disney, Marvel, and Kevin Feige created the MCU. I just gave it a slogan that was supposed to be a joke that ended up sticking because it's the MCU. From Screen Rant, published on June 25th, 2018. Exclusive. MCU will soon have more female heroes than male heroes. Kevin Feige
Never in comic book history has there been more female heroes than male heroes. And some people might say, well, that might not be, a bad, but you're ruining great stories by great authors when they did bring out a female superhero that made her story even greater. It made her story even mwah. And they fucking it up. She-Hulk is a good story. It's a good comic. But nobody wants to see it because they done brought out so many females. They're trashing She-Hulk. She-Hulk is actually a good, if you really into, comic books and science fiction, She-Hulk is a good counterpart to her cousin, Incredible Hulk. But nobody wants to see that garbage. And the reason they don't want to see it because they burn out. They see what you're trying to do. They see that you're trying to replace all the male heroes with female characters. And it's just not like that. Now let's get on to this guy's rant.
And that's when the realization finally sank in. This is what Star Wars is now. This is all it is. And in all likelihood, this is all it's ever going to be. Just a series of shallow, forgettable, undemanding, vaguely pleasant-looking TV shows buried deep within a cluttered and faltering streaming service. The kind of bland, inoffensively diverting white noise that you leave playing in the background while you scroll through your phone, or eat dinner, or lie semi-conscious in a pool of your own urine. Fuck. You know how sometimes a movie will begin at the end of its story with the protagonist staring in shock at the scene of some disastrous calamity and asking themselves, how did it come to this? Well, that's pretty much where I'm at with Star Wars now. How the hell did this franchise fall so low? How did one of the biggest, most recognizable and profitable pop culture phenomenons in modern history become a laughable and irrelevant footnote in the corporate streaming wars? How did they manage to squander the seemingly inexhaustible goodwill and enthusiasm of the biggest fan base in cinema history? Well, just like it takes more than a single hit to sink a battleship, so it requires more than just one bad decision to bring down a franchise as large as Star Wars. Luckily though, the history of this franchise over the past 10 years is positively teeming with them. I mean, you don't need me to tell you what a disastrous farce the sequel trilogy turned into, basically devolving into a war between an egotistical wannabe auteur and an overrated corporate hack, each of them doing their level best to erase the work of their predecessor. And all of this presided over by an incompetent diversity hire that I wouldn't trust to manage my local Domino's pizza.
This guy's too funny. They basically hired 2 women to oversee 2 groups of films, Marvel and Star Wars, and they ruined it. Both of these women are female activists. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with putting females in top positions. There's nothing wrong with that. But stick to the material. The material is good. The material is excellent. And they went off script because they wanted to do their own feminist thing. And plus they didn't want to pay the people who wrote those books. If some of you was to take the time to go to your library and read the years that came after Luke Skywalker defeated Darth Vader, and you get a chance to read how Chewbacca sacrificed his life to save one of Han Solo's sons, those books will amaze you. And the first thing gonna go through your mind is, why the fuck they didn't write a movie about this? This is epic. This trash that they brought out was garbage. Let's end this up.
The chaos behind the scenes and the resulting fan backlash even spilled into other movies that they tried to get off the ground, basically killing Solo stone dead and nixing the prospect of future sequels. Ambitious new movie projects and even whole trilogies were announced to great fanfare and then quietly shelved as writers, directors and ideas fell out of favour. With Star Wars basically dead at the box office and the unspecified virus of unknown origin making future movie releases questionable at best, the decision was made to use it as a tentpole attraction for Disney Plus instead. And if I was a cynical man, I'd say it was a way of limiting the financial damage and professional embarrassment of having Star Wars movies actually flop at the cinema, something that would have been completely unimaginable 20 years earlier. And so, the great experiment, The Mandalorian, began. A show about a bounty hunter at the edge of the galaxy who slowly gets embroiled in larger events. It was simple, it was low level, it was episodic, and after the overblown disaster of the movies, it was exactly what fans were looking for. An easy, uncomplicated palate cleanser that emulated the look and feel of classic Star Wars, and even recaptured the sense of adventure and possibility. For a while at least. Yeah, you could argue that most episodes were so simplistic as to be almost insulting to human intelligence, but whatever. I guess people were more easily pleased back then. The second season even delivered what may be the ultimate piece of fan service by having Luke Skywalker show up to save the day. There was no particular reason for it, and the more you think about it, the less sense it actually makes, but whatever. It got people right in the feels, and if you hit them hard enough in that particular area, it tends to bypass the thinking part of their brains. The problem is that giving Disney one marginally popular Star Wars show with a marketable character is like giving a T-bone steak to a pack of starving wolves. They wanted more, and fast, and so pretty soon the floodgates were opened and the sludge began to flow. Book of Boba Fett was a rushed, cheap, and ultimately pointless adventure featuring an old, overweight, and incompetent revision of a classic character who lets his sidekick do most of the fighting, talking, and thinking for him, a creepy CGI Luke Skywalker who spoke and acted about as realistically as a T-800.
Fuck you, asshole.
And a bait and switch plot whose main purpose was to undo the events of The Mandalorian. Because let's be honest, if you've finally stumbled ass backwards into a character that you can actually merchandise after 5 movies and hundreds of millions of dollars, then you're probably going to want to keep them around. I mean, those Rose Tico action figures aren't exactly flying off the shelves, are they? Things only got worse with Obi-Wan Kenobi, which managed to tarnish the legacy of not one, but 2 of the most popular characters in the Star Wars franchise, retcon events that absolutely never happened, and act as another bait and switch, this time to launch another tedious, strong, empowered female character. Because clearly the movies didn't give us enough of those. I wonder who mandated that particular plot point. Ironically, the only halfway decent thing to come out of all of this was Andor, a prequel to a spin-off about a character that's already dead. Yeah, genius marketing right there. I mean, it was smart, mature and complex, but it was also hampered by the fact that nobody wanted it, and so nobody watched it, and the show basically sank without a trace. But hey, at least The Mandalorian's still going strong, right? Season 3 somehow managed to open to lower viewing figures than Book of Boba Fett, and if you think those numbers are going to improve over the season, then you're probably an employee of Lucasfilm. This right here is how far Star Wars has fallen, when even its flagship TV show is struggling to get the numbers of an unpopular spin-off from a couple of years ago. Nobody even seems to be talking about it anymore. Honestly, the only reason I even knew that Season 3 had started was because someone mentioned it on Open Bar. And out of the 3 episodes that have aired so far, our supposedly experienced protagonist has now been captured twice and rescued twice by a strong female character who's rapidly becoming the real narrative focal point of the season. This all seems oddly familiar, doesn't it? I wonder who mandated that particular plot points.
And there you have it, people. There you have it. Hollywood doesn't have a woke problem. It has a feminist movement going on, just like a lot of industries do. And there's nothing wrong with female leads. There's nothing wrong with female characters being strong and being the hero of the story. But you've ruined something that's already is good by trying to force female characters into those roles instead of making your own. Not making your own with something that's already made. Make your own Star Wars and put a lead female into that. You see what I'm saying? They're trying to force lead characters in positions that they wasn't even meant to be in them positions, and they're ruining good stories. Hope you guys learned something from today. This is the Daily Read, and I'm out.
The business, motherfucker.
The Daily Read.
Bring in the business.